And now that I live in Spain, you think Spain, it is a Western country, but the longer I live here and the more I get to know the culture and the more I apply what I know from cultural psychology, I realize how collectivistic it actually is here. Yeah. And I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but I remember in your book, you mentioned one of the reasons that societies might become more collectivistic or individualistic depends on whether they had rice or wheat. Because rice, to cultivate rice, you need to work as a team, and wheat, you can often do it by yourself, right? Or with a small unit. And then I thought here in Spain, maybe it has something to do with paella rice. I don't know, though. I think it might have more to do with the Catholic history and things like that. But
no, that's. I think there's many different parts of our environment that shape the cultural norms that emerge, and you just alluded to a big one is just the key crops that we grow. That for much of history, most people were involved in food production. It's only relatively recently that we have developed, really since the Industrial Revolution, that a larger proportion of people have been able to leave basic food production. And wheat farming is something that is largely done by a single family, that they wait for the rains. Irrigation is used to a degree, but historically it wasn't used nearly to the degree that it is now. So people just waited for the rains to fall, and then at the end of the season they harvested their crops. Whereas growing rice, it's quite different. That rice is grown in paddies in standing water, and that means you need to have a shared irrigation system, because where when you flood your paddies has to be the same time that your neighbors flood their paddies, and so this involves a lot of coordination with others, and actually a hierarchical power where you look up to the governing authorities who are involved in deciding when this is happening. And then too, that rice cultivation is far more labor intensive, so there's a lot of labor sharing between families, so that you can't harvest all the rice at the same time, because you need support of others, your neighbors really, to harvest rice at those times. So then it's neighboring families coordinate such that they plant their rice at slightly different times, so that it's harvested at slightly different times. And all of this involves a lot of coordination with your neighbors. You have to learn to get along with neighbors and learn to do things in sync with neighbors, to coordinate with them. And so this has been argued to be a key reason why these more collectivistic traditions emerge, because you can see them, one, between countries, but also even within countries. A lot of this research has been done within China, because in China there's rice growing regions and there's wheat growing regions, and the rice growing regions, you see more evidence of this collectivistic way of thinking than in the wheat growing regions. And so that's one key source of influence is the crops that people raise. So
And bringing up the crops and the plow and everything, it even influences egalitarian views as well, right?
So that's been some interesting research that's been done by some economists, such as Nathan Nunn, and what they were looking at was just this idea of why do countries differ in terms of their norms towards gender equality. And they're really quite vast differences in countries between whether men and women are seen as equal, having same rights and opportunities, or whether they're seen as quite distinct, and there's the female world and there's a male world, and different rights and opportunities. And so one key argument has been made, and a lot of data is shown to back it up, is that places, once farmers adopted a plow, that this actually had big changes in society. Before there was a plow, people used to do agriculture largely with a stick like a hoe, and you would sort of dig a hole and put seeds in there. And farming then was practiced by both men and women in the community. And it was something both men and women were involved. And then the plow was an invention, and it was really good for agriculture because you could plant seeds far more effectively. With the plow, you can tear up the ground, and then it's much more efficient than digging individual holes. But the problem with the plow is, one, it's kind of dangerous because you need to tie the plow to some livestock like oxen to pull, and so it's kind of dangerous. So you don't want little kids around. And around the world, mothers do more child care of young infants than do men, and so you can't have kids around when you got a plow. And also, using the plow involves a lot of upper body strength too, which around the world men have more upper body strength. So you end up, once the plow comes in, all of a sudden farming becomes the man's job, and all of a sudden you have this big sort of sexual division of labor here that the men are involved in the basis of food production, which is the basis of the economy. And so what you can see is how long a region has been using the plow predicts how unequal are the gender norms today. And so places where the plow came later, in Scandinavia, the plow came a lot later. They had less time. They've had it for centuries, mind you, but it's been less time than it has been in much of the rest of the world. And so there's been less time for this gender division of labor to emerge. So, I find it really quite fascinating with culture that, going back in our history, some early changes that might seem kind of small or kind of unrelated can later on have persistent effects that shape the whole trajectory that a culture is on.